Martin St. Louis says that sometimes you lose yourself throughout the season. We'll be part of the search party. This is Hockey Inside Out. Hello and welcome to another episode of Hockey Inside Out. I'm your host, Jessica Rusnak. Joining me on the panel this week, we've got Stu Cowan from the Montreal Gazette. We've got Rick Green, former NHLer, Stanley Cup champ, and former assistant coach with the Montreal Canadiens, and Andrew Berkshire, independent hockey analyst. Now, things have not been going so well for the Montreal Canadiens. They've been outscored 19-7 in their last three games. After Tuesday's game, Martin St. Louis said that sometimes you lose yourself throughout the season. What do the Montreal Canadiens need to do to find their identity again? Stu, why don't you start us off this week?
Well, next week's the bye week for the Canadiens. It looks like they thought it was this week. And I asked Marty St. Louis after Tuesday's game, is it hard sometimes getting players to focus the week before they go on vacation? And he said, yeah, it can be. You want to finish strong going into it, but it's like anybody. If you're at work, whatever job you do, or at school, and you know you're on vacation next week, sometimes you're a little lackadaisical, maybe you're not as focused as you should be, and that's certainly what it looked like with the Canes against the Senators. You thought after they got blown out the way they did in Boston that they'd come back, and they also got blown out by the Senators in Ottawa. You thought they'd come back with a lot of fire, and they were just sleepwalking through the first two periods and half of the third period until they got the one goal. Then they sort of woke up too little, too late. Young team. Andrew mentioned a couple of shows ago that they have to work so hard to win compared to teams with more talent. I think they're worn down. And, Marty St. Louis' practices are tough also. Like there's a lot of tight 3-on-3 drills and that, a lot of hockey, a lot of tough practices. They look to me like they're worn down. And it's for the first time since St. Louis taken over as coach that they haven't seemed to have that fight. Like, I don't want to say they gave up because they did sort of come back after they got that goal against Ottawa, but I think they're a really tired hockey team right now. I think the bye week, it's coming at a good time. They really need it to get refocused again and come back, and hopefully for them not have similar games like this once they come back from the break.
Yeah, I think Stu really nailed it. Sorry there. But I think Stu really nailed it. The lack of attention to detail when you're about to go on vacation, and the combination of having to work harder than other teams to get to the wins, right? It stacks up, and it can result in things like the third period against Boston, where they had 40 minutes where the game was pretty tight. They created some good chances in that game, got through the Bruins defense pretty well, but consistently they were failing to pick up the late man coming in on the net drive against the Bruins through the first 40 minutes, and they just never quite adjusted throughout that game. And in the third period, the wheels fell off completely, and Boston just took it to them. And then like Stu said, you expect a better effort against Ottawa. They came into that game completely sleepwalking. Actually, in the last 40 minutes at even strength, they were much, much better than Ottawa. The scoring chances were 17-7 over the last 40 minutes at even strength, but the power play was sleepwalking, right? So they couldn't fully get themselves to where they needed to be. They had some big penalty kills on some pretty foolish penalties in the third period as well, but getting over that line is tougher for this team. When they're tired, it's even more difficult, and they've played well coming from behind throughout the last couple of seasons here under Marty St. Louis, but you can't play that way and win consistently. And I think it's one of those situations where we have to remember that this team is playing above its weight, considering the talent of the roster. The record is significantly better than what it should be after losing the players to injury that they did early in the season, and just the general level of talent on the team. So I think it's easy to get caught up in 3 straight losses where they look pretty terrible. But remember that the week before that, they beat Colorado, they beat New Jersey. They had some pretty strong games. So I wouldn't overreact to it. I'd like to see them reset a little bit going into the All-Star break. But at the same time, there's going to be periods like this in a rebuilding team, and you just have to learn what you can from it.
I think it's obvious they've checked out, looking at the effort that we hadn't seen for quite a while, as far as team buying in and really making it difficult for the opposition to play against them. And for whatever reason, they've run out of gas. yes, the schedule, you talk about the schedule, everybody goes through different grinds, if you will, over the course of the year, and it is tough. But for me, scheduling is no excuse. It's disappointing to see this group respond the way they have. Yeah, maybe they're a little bit tired, but I mean, I just don't like seeing what I'm seeing as far as effort goes, and taking a lot of pride that they had shown previously, and why they're doing it this particular time, and they know that they're getting a break coming up. Why not finish on much more of a positive note by giving everything they can? And I don't see that happening. Disappointing to see the response of a number of guys, and the results are they're getting blasted with giving up so many goals against, not creating much energy, not playing with energy or emotion or real pride. And that's not the hockey team that we had seen for most of the year. And I have a hard time accepting that.
Yeah, at home now, I mean, they're 9-12-3 at home. I mean, they've been horrible at the Bell Center. After Tuesday's game, the Senators, it was the Mums trip, and the Mums are up in a private loge. And after the game, the Senators skated the center ice, and they saluted with their sticks. Their mothers up in the loge. I think some of the Canadiens fans who were still there didn't realize that, and they were booing them like how disrespectful. But home ice has not been good for the Canadiens. The power play has been horrible, as you guys mentioned. Somebody tweeted during the game last night, "Oh, that was a successful power play. They didn't give up a goal or any 2-on-1 breaks." And that's what it's become with the power play. I mean, the shorthanded goal Ottawa scored right off a face-off. Total breakdown. I mean, they lose the face-off. Caufield and Slafkovsky both chase the guy at the point. Nobody covers a guy going to the net. Rebound, easy goal. Like, how does that happen? That's a concern. That means you're mentally checked out, or you don't know what your assignments are. I mean, two forwards going after the guy at the point and just leaving the guy walk in for the rebound when you're 5-on-4. That was, I watched that replay on video, slowed it down a bunch of times. I was like, what were these guys doing?
Well, Stu, it happens because you're asking a forward to play in front of your net. And guess what? They won't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just classic example of just the type of mental breakdowns and things that are unacceptable. These things shouldn't be happening at this point of the season. And say what you want, miscommunication or lack of communication or whatever, it's consistently part of their problem, that they're making poor decisions and errors that shouldn't be happening this time of the year. And some of these guys, I hope, are held accountable for saying, you did the wrong thing again, and let's smarten up. Let's try and repair some of the problem areas that we've had for most of the year, and that's missed assignment, and doing what they're supposed to do when they don't have the puck. And
well, before that face-off, you'd think at least Caufield and Slafkovsky would talk. Okay, I got him, you got him, type of thing. It's like there's neither of them knew what they were doing. It looked like, or they both thought they were doing the same thing.
Yeah, what I also found was interesting is after the game when Arber Xhekaj was interviewed about his first game back with the Canadiens, and he said that he felt the team was missing some energy, that they felt tired. And it's pretty much like what we've been saying. We've been noticing that this team is tired, and they really shouldn't be going into this game tired because their last game was Saturday. They had Sunday off. But yeah, that's an interesting thing that he picked up right away with this team. And speaking of Arber Xhekaj, I think a lot of people were happy when they saw that the Canadiens called him up from Laval after playing 17 games down there. What did you think about the call-up? Was this long overdue? And what do you think about some of the roster moves that they made to call him up, putting Justin Barron on loan and then Mitchell Stevens on waivers?
I think it was the right move. Justin Barron definitely needs a bit of a reset. We've been talking about that for a while now on this show. It seems like it's been a lot of weeks that we've been saying Justin Barron needs to get his head on straight a little bit. He has some things to work on. I didn't like Xhekaj's first game back. Taking a bad penalty right away, I think, is not great for him. I didn't see what I wanted to see from him, even though he played extremely well in Laval, but hopefully he picks it up and adjusts again to NHL speed right away. Don't want to overreact to one game. But overall, I think the way that the Canadiens have handled their defensemen this year has been pretty good. I was a little confused about the Mitchell Stevens thing just because, running through games with 3 centers is kind of tough, and they don't have anybody who's about to come back who's capable of playing that position either. So they have to find a solution there somewhere. It's got to a point now where I don't know if they can wait all the way to the deadline to make some moves. I do think just for the functionality of the team, Hughes and Gorton are going to have to start working the phones a little bit heavier here.
I mean, my first impression with Xhekaj was he looked a little bit nervous and, didn't have the composure that he has shown, earlier on in the year, which is fine. I mean, it's there's a lot of pressure when you come up and the expectations are there that you're going to make a wow game, first game. So that wasn't the case, but, I think that he's got a little ways to go to get his game back. And obviously the roster moves is a case of a numbers game. Barron, who maybe was struggling a little bit defensively, was a move that, his name was available to go down without any problem. He can go down and play and try and hone his defensive game a little bit. Stevens is just kind of a role player, a depth player, if you will, that I think that, they have enough players to bring up to fill that void, if you will. But, overall, again, the comments about being fatigued and energy, it's an excuse for me. And I have a hard time accepting that. I mean, they talk about the travel schedule, going from home, go to New Jersey, then come back to Ottawa. It's the travel is usually works pretty well. Players are well taken care of. Players, it's unlike the years of before where you play one game, it's a 3-day trip. So they're taken care of, and it's just it shouldn't be happening that they're showing fatigue at this stage, and they should be responding much more in a much more positive way.
And complaining about travel on the East Coast, Rick, has got to be a little bit hard to swallow for teams like the Vancouver Canucks, who are crushing it and have the worst travel schedule in the league.
Yeah, flight from New Jersey to Ottawa is what, an hour, if that?
And it's charter.
I mean, I was out in LA there, and just in the coaching capacity, and I'm going, how do the players, let alone coaches, deal with the 5 different time zones that you go through, to make one road trip? And no, sorry, the travel, the scheduling, I don't buy it. I don't buy it.
Yeah, with Jack, I mean, the Rocket were on a roll with him there, 8-1-1 in their last 10 games. You ready? He looked nervous to me a little bit, Rick, and sort of uncertain. And he did get that penalty, as you mentioned, Andrew. I thought it was a real chintzy call. Like I think if it's not Arber Xhekaj, that's not a penalty. I saw the referee talking to him after he made the call. I thought that was a cheap one. The thing with Xhekaj, I wrote a column and after he spoke following the morning skate Tuesday, and Marty St. Louis spoke, and he was caught off guard when they sent him down, and he didn't know when he was going to get called up. And as I wrote, I think that was done intentionally by the Canadiens. I think the Canadiens, reading between the lines, were a little concerned that Xhekaj's star was getting a little too big too soon off the ice. The sheriff thing. And, when he sent down, Marty St. Louis said he needs to learn to be a pro. And Xhekaj said when he first got sent down, he didn't really know what that meant. But it seemed like Xhekaj was maybe taking his spot for granted on this team, that he was a definite thing, and that's not a good thing for anyone to do. As Marty St. Louis said, he's Marty St. Louis, a Hall of Fame player, so I never took it for granted that I was in the NHL ever. Even when I was a first-line All-Star, I always figured somebody's coming after my job. And I think Xhekaj got that message pretty loud and clear now. I think he'll calm down a little bit. I mean, as I said, he looked really nervous. He didn't look himself in that game. When he took the penalty, he was sort of trying to get at Tkachuk, trying to get him maybe to fight to spark things. It didn't happen. With Barron, as St. Louis said, he lost confidence. I mean, you could tell he was just horrible with the puck. Good to send him down. The St. Louis said the thing In the NHL, it's game. There's very little practice time, whereas in the AHL, you usually play 3 games in 4 days on the weekend. Then you have like 3 straight days of practices. So that should help him also. And, with the 3 center thing, it was very interesting that Sean Monahan had no comment when asked about it after the game last night. Nick Suzuki said all the right things. They have to juggle roster spots and that. But with Monahan's no comment, he's obviously not happy with the 3 center thing. And, for Monahan, at least he's not going to be here after the trade deadline. It came pretty clear at Kent Hughes' news conference that he will be dealt to a contender at the trade deadline. But the Canes are juggling, as you said. They could send Barron down because he doesn't have to clear waivers. So it's a whole, with the salary cap and waivers, it's a real juggling act by GMs and the Canadiens. And you're right, Andrew, that might be why Kent Hughes might make a move sooner rather than later, just to sort of solve that situation and settle things down as far as, having 4 centers and regular lines. Mike Pizzetta had like 1 minute and 50 seconds of ice time last night. So there's a lot of moving parts as this rebuild continues.
Yeah, I think what you're going to end up seeing is... Sorry, Jess, go for it.
No. If you want to finish your thought before we move on.
Sure. I was just going to say, I think what we're going to probably see is in the trades that Hughes makes, like when he trades Sean Monahan, when you likely trade maybe like David Savard, you're going to get back like a fringe NHL center in both, right? And that'll be how they formulate the lineup towards the end of the season. Maybe guys that Hughes believes could be more than what they are in another organization, but not like big time prospects kind of thing, and give them a chance through the end of the season here to earn a spot in the NHL kind of thing. But they need 4 centers. I'm sure Sean Monahan's probably thinking about his body breaking down before the playoffs, right? Playing too many minutes. So it's clock's ticking in his head as well. He needs to be able to be at his best.
Now, Thursday night's game against the New York Islanders took on a whole new meaning on Saturday when they announced that they hired Patrick Roy as their new head coach. His name has been circulating when there was coaching vacancies in the NHL for a while. He hasn't coached in the NHL since 2016. What's your take on Lou Lamoriello taking a chance on Patrick Roy? Rick, what's your thoughts?
Well, one thing will be for sure is there's going to be a lot of emotion and there's going to be a lot of screaming and yelling, I'm thinking, to get his team ready. And that's, that time will tell. I mean, he's been waiting for his opportunity. Now he's given it. Let's, wish him well, not for tomorrow night, but let's see where it goes. He's had success, obviously, at all levels. He seems to bring the best out of the group that he has. And like any coaching change, he's going to bring some spark. He's going to bring some energy, and they're going to compete. And at the end of the year, we'll see, what the numbers say as far as the win-losses go. But they'll be prepared to play, and he'll have them doing the best they can do with what he has to work with.
Yeah, I don't know if coaches are allowed to put money up on the board, but even if they're not, I'm sure Patrick will have a few bucks or some kind of incentive for his players going into this game. The Islanders are off Friday. I don't know what their travel plans are, if they're planning to fly home right after the game, but it wouldn't surprise me if Patrick said something like, you guys win tonight, we're staying over in Montreal, and I'm picking up the tab. So it's going to be an emotional night. I'm not shocked about Lamoriello hiring Patrick, and I spoke with Rick's buddy Larry Robinson the other day, and he wasn't that surprised either because Lou Lamoriello has a history of hiring former Canadians to coach his teams. Jacques Lemaire, Larry Robinson, Pat Burns, now Patrick Roy. And I think, Patrick mentioned in his news conference, he's been humbled. He's been out of the NHL for 7 years, and the way he left Colorado wasn't good. He doesn't play well with others. He couldn't see eye to eye with Joe Sakic, and he said he realizes now you can't coach and be GM in the NHL. And I think he's really been humbled. He was even willing to shave his beard off to fit Lou Lamoriello's strict rules to come back and coach. But I think they'll be a good pair. Larry Robinson told me that Lou Lamoriello was like a second father to him. Anytime he had any problems on the ice, off the ice, whatever, he would go speak with Lou. And he has the utmost respect for him. And he said, Lou wants to win. He'll do everything for his team to win. He'll do everything to help his players and his coaches win. I think Lou Lamoriello will be a really good influence on Patrick Roy. I don't think he wants Patrick Roy to not be that fiery guy behind the bench, because we saw his first game and his first practice. The fire was there. I'm sure Lou had a conversation. I want that fire now. You got to light a fire under these guys. But I'm sure he's also going to keep an eye on Patrick. And when he goes too far, he's going to call him in and tell him. And I'm sure Patrick's going to have respect for Lou Lamoriello. He's been around the NHL forever. He's 81 years old. He doesn't look it. He looks like he's like 61. But Patrick realized like he thought the phone would ring when he left Colorado. He thought the phone would ring when he won the Memorial Cup with Quebec, and it didn't both times. And that's because of his reputation. It's not like he can't coach. Robinson said it's even harder to win a Memorial Cup than it is to win a Stanley Cup because, you got to win your league. Then you got to go to a tournament and win that. You're dealing with young kids and all that comes with that. So I'm not shocked that Lou Lamoriello would reach out to another former Canadian to try and win him another Stanley Cup.
On the surface, it looks like a weird fit because Lou Lamoriello is always just like so business, right? Everything is so serious with Lou Lamoriello, and with Patrick Roy, it's serious, but it's serious in a different way, right? It's all intensity and fire and the ultimate competitor. But as you broke it down, Stu, it might be the perfect pairing because Lamoriello actually has the clout to be able to pull Roy back a little bit when it's necessary. And I don't think many GMs in the NHL do. You're talking about a Hall of Famer, the absolute ultimate competitor in goal, the best playoff goaltender in the history of the game, the innovator of the position as well, that changed how everything worked in the 80s and 90s, equipment innovator, everything. So this is a guy who has a lot of clout. There aren't many people who can sit and say, I'm your boss. So I think he had trouble when he first broke into the NHL not being in charge. He was, I believe, a part owner of the Remparts or a full owner. He didn't answer to anybody there. So now it's a second chance where he has to answer to somebody who is far above him in terms of NHL credibility at that position. So it might work out perfectly. It might turn him into a better coach.
And Pat Burns was a pretty fiery coach, and he worked out okay with Lou Lamoriello.
All right, now moving on to rapid fire. Can Brendan Gallagher become a regular goal scorer again? Andrew, do you see this happening?
Well, I'm of two minds on this because you look at the underlying numbers and Brendan Gallagher actually leads the team in 5-on-5 expected goals. So he's getting chances, but you watch him and there are games where Brendan Gallagher is the Brendan Gallagher that we know, but they're becoming few and far between. And when he has those games, he is really, really effective, really great. And then there's a few games where he kind of looks like he's on the struggle bus a little bit. And he's on that right now. He's not kept up with his line recently. I really like the idea of that Evans, Harvey Pinard, Gallagher line that St. Louis put together a couple weeks ago. And it seemed like he was the guy holding that line back a little bit in most of the games. He had a couple good performances. I think he can still be a 15 to 19 goal guy, but being a consistent goal scorer with the limited amount of ice that he has to play to keep his energy up because he exerts himself so much on every shift, and just the struggle that he has to get things done like consistently every game, I don't think so anymore. I think that he's a bit part player in this rebuild.
Yeah, I agree with you, Andrew. I mean, it almost breaks my heart to say it because I've admired Brendan Gallagher since the day he first arrived with the Canadiens, and heart and soul, and gives everything he's got. He still gives everything he's got, but he just doesn't have that much left. 8 goals now. You're right. There's some games he looks good, but there's some games you don't notice him. And you used to notice Brendan Gallagher every game when he was healthy, and he's healthy now. Like, there's no injuries, so he's a healthy Brendan Gallagher. And there's too many nights where you just don't notice him. And Father Time's undefeated. A lot of wear and tear on that body. It's catching up to him. He's got a few more years left on that contract. I mean, he did look good earlier in the season when he was playing with Monahan and Pearson. I don't know if St. Louis goes back to that and keeps them together for a little while to see if that can get him going. But it's, he's getting older, and that body, there's a lot of miles on it, and it's really starting to show. And it's hard. There's nights it's hard to watch because the effort is there. Like, he'll give you everything he's got, but he just doesn't have what he used to have.
Yeah, I don't think that he'll be able to, get that consistent scoring touch back, if you will. I think that trying to keep up, yes, he's going to get to the net. Yes, he's going to go in and create a lot of havoc, in the opposition's zone. But to be able to finish with the amount of ice time that he does get and his overall performance and energy is not what it was when he was able to score 30 goals. And I think that the downside, if you will. He's not going to be able to find the net as much as he would like to. He's going to give you a lot of other things, obviously, in his desperation and desire to work, but to be able to finish is a big challenge, and for him to score on a regular basis, I think at this stage is a tough ask
Gallagher. Sorry there, Rick. What Gallagher reminds me of, did you guys watch Ted Lasso the first season? At the end, when the captain there was just a little bit behind, he was getting old, and he was dropping F-bombs every practice because he's just like a half second behind on every drill that they were running. That's what Gallagher, when he's struggling, reminds me of, where he's going to the right spots, he has the right instincts, but he's a little bit behind, and it throws everything off for him. And I wonder if he's having fun. I do wonder if that, when he's playing well, you can see that he's having fun. He's getting in players' faces, but I don't see the consistent fun in his game, and that's got to be tough as a pro athlete.
And he hates losing. He hates losing too, and he got 3 more years at $6.5 million left on that contract.
And you as a player know and feel and sense all of those things that 2 or 3 years ago were happening in such a positive way, and then now, no matter what you do, it's a constant struggle, and you know that it's not what it was, and it's not a happy place to be in, because when you have a lot of pride in a job well done and you're not able to deliver, it hurts. And not to say that, I'm not saying that he's finished, but I'm saying that he'd like to, but I don't think he can anymore.
Yeah. And I think it's very telling, because remember when Brendan Gallagher entered the league, everyone said he's going to have a very short span in the NHL because the way he's playing, he can't keep this up for more than 2-3 years. And he kept proving people wrong. But now, it's been at least 10 years that he's been in the NHL, if not, he's close to that the wear and tear does come. But he proved that, I don't have a short lifespan here. I can continue to play the way I want to and find ways to have success.
And part of his willingness to play through those injuries is part of why he's so broken down now, right? There was times he should have shut it down and not played, and he played through it because that's the kind of guy he is.
Exactly. The next question for Rapid Fire is Johnathan Kovacevic. We saw he scored a goal against the Ottawa Senators Tuesday night, the lone goal of the game. But prior to that, he was a healthy scratch. Do you think that he deserved to not play? Rick, what do you think about Kovacevic in and out of the lineup?
I always liked Kovacevic. I mean, he's averaging 17 minutes. He's the kind of player that doesn't make too many mistakes. And if you look at his positional play and his defensive responsibility, he doesn't get beat too often. And decisions with the puck, a lot of positives with this guy. And, I personally really like his overall game. You say what you want. He's, if you want to bring a plus-minus situation in, you talk about dependable. He leads the defensive core with a +7, which basically, when you draw a comparison to some of the other guys that you see on the ice for a lot of goals against, he's not one that's there. And, I put him in the category of Struble. Very dependable, nothing flashy, but very simple, plays within his capabilities each and every night. And he brings stability and consistency back on the blue line, which when I look around and see some of the other players that are on their blue line, some of them should learn from him.
Yeah, he's 26 years old. I don't know if he really factors into the rebuild when they get to where they want to be. I think that's probably why he's a healthy scratch, because they want to play the younger guys more. I wrote a column last week on Kovacevic. He's he epitomizes the winning attitude that Marty St. Louis wants in the locker. He doesn't complain when he's a healthy scratch. He cheers for the other defensemen to do well. He's a great guy in the locker room. All the guys love him. As Rick is, and nobody knows better than Rick. Plus minus has to be taken with a grain of salt. Sometimes a very big one. But when you're playing on a bad hockey team like the Canadiens as a defenseman, you're playing a lot of minutes and you're +7. You're doing something right. He's also got 6 goals. He's not considered enough. He's tied with Juraj Slafkovsky in goals. Nobody's expected him to be a goal scorer, but he's got a good shot. And I remember talking with earlier this season when he scored, and I went up to say, "Oh, you're a goal scorer now." And he sort of laughed, and he said, "But no, once they start going in, you start having more confidence to maybe hang on to the puck a little bit, look for that open lane and shoot." And we're seeing that with him. So Kovacevic, he's, as Rick, as you said, he's a steady guy. He knows his limitations, and that's huge for a defenseman. He knows what he can do, and he knows what he can't do, and he plays within those limitations. And I think that's why he's a plus player on a team that really struggles in the defensive zone. He's a great teammate. He's a likable guy. I don't know what his future is with the Canadiens, but I'm sure there's other teams around the NHL that wouldn't mind having Johnathan Kovacevic on their third pairing as a defenseman.
Yeah, he's a valuable player. I think, remember last year we saw so many different times where he would jump into the play and make what looked like a really good offensive play, and he just couldn't pull it off. Like, he had the offensive instincts, but it didn't look like he had the talent to do it. And then this year, all of a sudden, he's kind of leaned into that. And I don't know if that's a directive from the coaching staff to focus more on offense, but he's been great offensively. I do think the defense has suffered a little bit this season. Overall, over the last year and a half now, he's above average both offensively and defensively compared to other defensemen in the NHL, which is a pretty solid little career he's carving out for himself. It's odd to think of it as a 26-year-old, right? But it's almost like this year is a development year for him. He's learning how to be an offensive defenseman and also not let his defense fall apart. And I think we've seen a lot of progress from him. I don't know if, like Stu said, I don't know if he's part of the long-term plans in Montreal, but I think he's going to have a long career in this league because he's established himself as a multi-tool defenseman. And I also believe he's the best penalty killer on defense on this team. Like, full stop. I think he's the best penalty killing defenseman on the team.
Pretty good waiver pickup.
Yeah.
Stu, we're going to pick up on a player you just mentioned, Juraj Slafkovsky. How many goals do you see him ending the season with?
Well, he's got 6 now. He got taken off the first line at the end of that Ottawa game, replaced by Josh Anderson. They've been together for more than 20 games. We were talking earlier about guys getting tired a bit and season catching up to. I think it's happening with Juraj Slafkovsky also. He's looked a little bit lost at times in recent games. He's still passing when he has great chances to shoot way too often. He had a chance early in the game last night, and he sort of hesitated to pass, and then he tried to toe drag type thing, and it was too late. Like, he's got to shoot the puck as soon as he gets an opening to do it. I don't know if he's going to figure that out more going forward, but I see him finishing the season with probably around 10 goals.
I think he's going to get more than that. Yeah. Sorry, Rick.
No, go ahead.
I think he's going to get more than that. I think that you watch his game in the last couple months here, and he's figuring things out at a pretty rapid rate. I don't know if that ascension is going to continue at the same path, but I think he's going to finish around 15 goals. I do think he's going to light it up a little bit as long as that line stays together. If Marty actually does keep Josh Anderson on that top line after 20 minutes of being okay, I would be really shocked. And to me, it would be a really big knock against Marty as a coach, because I know a lot of people like Josh Anderson, but Josh Anderson has a game like that once every 20 games, and the rest of his play is just not good. Like, we got to talk about this player honestly. He has games where he can, because of his speed and his physicality, change the game, but it's just not very often. And most of the time, most games in and out, he's a defensive black hole, and he doesn't create offense for his teammates. He can't think on the same level as Suzuki and Caufield, whereas Slafkovsky has consistently proven that he's actually capable of doing that and being good defensively as well. So I think they really do need to lean into giving this player more opportunities, at not giving it to Josh Anderson at the cost of Juraj Slafkovsky's development. I think that he's starting to pick up the shooting a lot more, and he's going to figure it out. Not crazy, light it up down the stretch like Caufield's doing right now, but I do think he has the ability to put up 12 to 15 goals.
Yeah, and if he doesn't start shooting, he's not going to be scoring. Obviously, he's going to the net. He's a big body. He's trying to use his size, but the kid has to understand: don't be looking for making passes all the time. You got to shoot the puck. And that being said, he's got the ability to make things happen. He just hasn't consistently delivered. If he gets 10 or 12 goals, I would be, in agreement with somewhere in that number. But until he figures that I got to get more pucks to the net, use my shot, he's going to struggle in that department. But he does have the tools, and he it's time. Like, let's bring him out and get your shot going, and you might be surprised how many goals you could score.
Well, we mentioned earlier about the Canadiens sending a message to Arber Xhekaj by sending him down to Laval. Don't take anything for granted. I think that might have been a similar type of message to Slafkovsky, taking him off that number one line after leaving him there for so long, since early December, that don't take this for granted, kid. If you don't perform, we're not just going to leave you there just for the sake of leaving you there. Like, if you're not going to keep doing what we want you to do, and maybe they are, I'm sure they're telling him to shoot the puck more. And if they don't see it happening, they're going to, okay, we're going to put somebody else there then. And I think that might be maybe a bit of a wake-up call too.
Now, there's high expectations for Cole Caufield starting the season, hitting potentially the 40, 50 goal mark. It seems like he has found his scoring touch again, but what do you think is a realistic number for Cole Caufield to end the season when it comes to goal scoring? Rick, what do you predict?
Well, he's, 47 games played, 16, lots of opportunity. Like we've been saying for most of the year, the kid still gets chances to score. Doesn't always obviously make it happen, but 35 games left with 16. I would give him the 32 mark as far as being able to reach. But one thing that's really enjoyable to watch him is he goes to these different areas, and goal scorers always seem to get pucks at areas where they have an opportunity to score, and he is really good at it, and he's going to continue to be good at it. And I think the results will be he'll find the net maybe 32 times.
Yeah, I think he can hit 30. I think he's going to be pushing himself as we get later in the season. I think in his back of his mind, that might be a personal goal he says, I got to hit 30. Like if he hits 30, people will go, I was okay. Like people were probably, before the season, people were talking 40 goals, 50 goals, but it's hard to score in the NHL. And, he hadn't played a full season, after the injury last year. So, but I think that he's got such a great neck. He shoots. You don't need to tell Cole Caufield to shoot. So I think I can see him hitting 30 goals. I think that in the back of his mind, that's something he's probably setting a goal to reach. And I think as the season moves on, his shooting percentage has moved up. It was down at 6.5%. He had it up over 9 with the recent tear. So I think I can see him hitting 30, maybe scoring 30 goals scoring his 30th in the last game of the season.
I'm a little bit more optimistic. Caufield, obviously now he's at 9.2% on his finishing, which is league average. We all know that he's a better shooter than league average. That also includes defensemen in that league average. I believe forwards are closer to like 11% on average. He's getting lots of opportunities, as you guys mentioned. If Caufield shoots at the same rate this season, like shots per game, the rest of the way, and finishes on those shots the same way he did the last 2 years, he should end up around 38. I think that's a very safe finish for Cole Caufield this year. I don't think 40 is out of the question because he's been so unlucky. He hasn't really been on a tear where, everything he shoots goes in. Goal scorers have those. He had a 5-game goal scoring streak, but in those 5 games, he was shooting constantly, right? There's games where he had like 7 shots and only 1 would go in. So there's going to be games where he shoots 5 times and 3 go in down the stretch. The Canadiens in general, all their forwards are scoring below what's expected based on the shots that they've taken. It's pretty crazy how unlucky they've been from a shooting perspective, and the opposite on the defensive end, where they've got like David Savard, Kovacevic, Mike Matheson scoring at career high rates. It's an interesting situation the Canadiens are in overall, but over the course of an 82-game season, I expect Caufield to like level out and be around 38, 39 goals.
The thing that's interesting, Andrew, he hasn't scored more than 1 goal in any game. He hasn't had a 2-goal game all year.
Oh, well, Stu, I think you've jinxed him in a good way, that the next game will be a hat trick because of that. And we'll reconvene at the end of the season and see who's right about this. That's all the time we have today on Hockey Inside Out. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. Make sure to go to hockeyinsideout.com to check out your daily Habs coverage, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and go to montrealgazette.com/newsletters to sign up for the Hockey Inside Out newsletter. We will see you here next week.